This is Democracy Watch. So, Mark, we've watched as Republicans have squandered nearly their entire House majority down to almost a single seat now. Is it possible we could see Democrats flip the House mid-cycle if there are more Republican retirements?
Is this amazing or what? I mean, this has got to be the most incompetent branch of government ever. Like, think about it. Like, you have three branches of government, you have incompetent branches at any one time, but literally, Mike Johnson couldn't run a laundromat successfully. Like,
Yeah.
even if all you had to do was like put quarters in the machine, it's just incredible to watch as number one, he has faced people just ignore what he has to say. He has had retirements. He has people retiring, seemingly timing their retirement to prevent him from being able to fill the seat. It's just astounding. So, I mean, we were in uncharted territory with Kevin McCarthy. We knew we were in uncharted territory with Kevin McCarthy because it took him so damn long to become the speaker in the first instance. People forget how embarrassing a display that was for the Republicans in the House. The vote after the vote after the vote in order to get Kevin McCarthy over the hump the first time. Then, of course, we had him get booted by his conservatives, which may now happen to Johnson, who
Yeah.
we could talk about that. But it has been one thing after another. And so, sure, it's possible because under the rule that the Republicans set up, and this is a point that everyone needs to understand. It's their rule. They set up a rule that any one member can move to vacate the chair. And so presumably, if you were at some moment in time where there were just more Democrats able to be in the House than Republicans, whether it's, due to anything, a codel overseas, um, some Democrat could move to vacate the chair. They would then move to they'd do it, and then they'd move to elect. And if at that point there were just more votes for Hakeem Jeffries than the other side, whoever they put up, then that would be that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's almost unthinkable, but these people are such morons.
Well, has anything else ever happened like this before in the House?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, I don't believe that there has ever been a circumstance in which you've had this. In part, and by the way, you might ask yourself, well, what about the Senate, right? Because the Senate does have these sort of laser thin majorities,
Yeah.
and certainly this must happen. The thing is that most chambers don't allow a single member to simply upend who the leadership is, right? So when you hear that, like, Senator McConnell and Senator Schumer have entered into an agreement at the beginning of every Congress, the majority, the two Democratic and Republican leaders enter into an agreement over committee staffing and committee attendance, how many members are each committee and leadership. That's precisely to put before the Senate and then have there be a rule that kind of sets some stability in place. Well, the House the House still theoretically does that, except that McCarthy gave all of these concessions to the conservatives that included this one person can vacate the chair. And that's the problem, right? If it required 100 members to sign a petition to vacate the chair
It would never
or
happen.
50 members to vacate the chair, then no, you could not have a new Speaker of the House. But here we are.
Right, because of Republicans' own decision to presumably give themselves power, which ultimately just ended up, putting throwing egg on their face in the end of the day.
I mean, it basically seems like everything that Kevin McCarthy gave to Republicans um, is now coming to bite them in the butt,
Yeah.
right? I mean, think about it. The he gave them more seats on the Rules Committee, which is literally the gatekeeper to what bills come to the floor. So what has that done? That has stymied the ability of him and then others, and then now Mike Johnson after him to get things to the floor without him suffering embarrassment at the hands of his own party. He gave them this one seat. Any one member could vacate the chair. That is obviously having this impact here. But let's not also forget, we recently saw the president sign a new budget for the United States, a fiscal agreement, Well, Kevin McCarthy had negotiated the terms of that with President Biden like a year ago. It's actually why he was kicked out. So and Biden said all along, like, I'm not renegotiating this. Well, guess what? He didn't have to renegotiate it.
Yeah.
The final deal that we just saw is roughly the same as the one that Kevin McCarthy was kicked out a year ago. So the conservative MAGA wing has done nothing that has been functional. Everything they have done has played into the hands of the Democrats and to President Biden.
Well, to that point, what does it say about today's House Republicans that this is how they're spending their time in the majority? Either with, either between trying to kick out their own speaker or engaging in these, interminable investigations into Joe and Hunter Biden that don't have any evidence actually backing up any of their claims.
Yeah, they have less than no evidence. They have like negative evidence. What they
Yeah.
have is that Joe Biden is actually a pretty good father and apparently a pretty good brother too. You
Yeah.
know, I hope I'm as good of a father to my children, and I think my brother would say I'm a pretty good brother. But like it shows a decent man who cares about his family. But there is beyond no whiff of corruption. There is not even like a dog could like find a scent of corruption on this. And the Republicans know this. And so now they have sort of dropped impeachment because they don't have even the grounds. I mean, think about how little evidence they must have. They can't even get their own conservatives to vote for impeachment. Like
where by the way, there's no bar really. I mean, you can vote for impeachment based on anything. There's no
correct,
legal threshold that you have to. It doesn't have to be beyond a reasonable doubt. It's just
correct.
it's vibes at the end of the day,
It's
really.
vibe. They don't even have vibes. They got
Yeah.
they got no vibes. Republicans got no vibes going on here. So that's how they spend their time with that. And then, as you point out, they otherwise seem to largely be involved in self-sabotage.
What was your response to that move by James Comer to basically give up on the impeachment probe and say, actually, what we're doing is just laying a predicate for a criminal prosecution of Joe Biden at the end of the day?
I think it shows how sick and desperate they are. I mean, the desperate, everybody knows. Everybody knows that he is doing this out of a sign of desperation because there was no there with impeachment. They could not make a there. They could not even make up a there. So everyone gets the desperation. But I want to talk about the sickness for a second, because we talk a lot in this series about the sickness of what MAGA is doing to our democracy through the election process, what the sickness that MAGA is doing through restricting people's ability to vote. Well, MAGA sickness is doing something else to our democracy, which is it is constantly putting pressure on our non-political, non-partisan institutions. So as much of a joke as you and I may think it is that they have moved this from impeachment to now some kind of who knows what referral to the Department of Justice, they have taken it out of the circus and now thrown this clown car into the hands of the Department of Justice. Now, look, the Department of Justice is used to getting clown cars, and they throw them out. They just disregard them.
Yeah.
But we know what this is a setup for. This is a setup for Donald Trump to then rail in a political context that somehow Joe Biden is getting special treatment. So I want everyone to be clear that the sickness of what we are seeing in the House is not just confined to the House. It is pervasive and it is destructive to the fiber and core of our democracy.
Perfectly put. By the way, for those watching right now, if you want to support the work that Marc and his team do in protecting our democracy in the courts, the best way to do that, I'm going to put the link right here on the screen. Click on the link. It is to sign up for Democracy Docket. That's the free news outlet Marc founded to focus on everything voting in elections. It's an amazing resource I use on a daily basis, super easy to read, and of course, as I said, completely free. So click on that link right here on the screen or find it in the post description of this video and sign up. That'll support Marc and his team over there. Marc, what is the lesson moving forward for these House Republican candidates across the country seeking another term in Congress after basically broadcasting to the American people that all they're willing to accomplish is baseless investigations and kicking out their own speaker? Like, what's the argument to garner any more votes to put themselves back in the majority?
I mean, honestly, I don't even know why they want to serve in Congress. I mean, they don't want to pass laws.
Yeah.
I mean, can't they go now and just become lobbyists for the oil and coal industry? Like, do they really need to spend another 2 years wasting taxpayer dollars pulling the stunts that they're pulling? Why do these Republicans even want to be in government when all they want to do is badmouth government? They're not here doing the work of the American people. They're not here doing the work of their constituents. They're here, some of them trying to become social media stars, some of them auditioning to be on Fox News as paid contributors, and some of them, like I said, just want to go become paid lobbyists. My advice to you is just go do those things. Like, don't burden us with your nonsense anymore, because you don't want to be a public servant, which is what being in public office means.
And I would just add too, there is a more insidious element of this that you and I have spoken about, and that's the fact that if they can do whatever they can to break government, then they can turn around and point at that broken government as some justification to then elect more Republicans who want to strip down government, to its spare parts throughout the entire government. So I think like ultimately this does redound to their benefit by breaking something and then showing that it can't work, and then electing more people who agree with the concept that government can't work. And so, as pernicious a strategy as this is, ultimately it does kind of align with their broader goal of just tearing the whole thing down.
Absolutely. And look, the other thing that we'd be remiss if we didn't mention is you and I have talked repeatedly about the scourge of Republican gerrymandering in this country. One of the reasons why the Republicans are able to disregard what their constituents need or want is because in so many places, the Republicans at the state level are even worse than the congressional level. And they have engaged in the most abusive forms of gerrymandering and the deprivation of voting rights to minority voters, that they just think they're impenetrable. They don't think that the elections are going to matter. And so, gerrymandering is in the hands of these folks is a cancer on our democracy.
Well, to that point, I think no one has been, fighting against Republican efforts to gerrymander as hard as you and your team. So again, for those watching right now, if you want to support the work that Marc and his team do, sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link on this screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Marc Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.